What's up, everyone? Welcome to this episode of the Xtra Mile Podcast. This is going to be kind of a special edition episode, so you definitely want to tune into all the details that we're going to discuss in just a minute because we're welcoming in Chaz Wilson all the way from Texas to discuss all things business and master networks and a couple of things and questions that I've got for him that you don't want to miss, so stay tuned.
The Xtra Mile, Mr. Brightside. Yeah, I know you heard me. Stop this movement that's moving. Well, you gon' have to murder me. Overcome adversity. My whole life, Bobby Jones, Mr. Brightside. And this is the Xtra Mile.
All right, guys, we are in here. Again, as I said just a minute ago, we've got Chaz Wilson in here, this is an awesome episode because I don't know if when I started the podcast or even built out the studio, if I ever thought that this man would be sitting across from me here on the show. So I'm very grateful to have him here. It's going to be an awesome discussion. Welcome to the show. Thanks for coming.
Thank
you. Chaz, if you could go into a brief intro and tell everybody a little bit about who you are.
Yeah, well, I'm honored to be here because I've seen the show and I've watched it. Now I'm in studio. So cool to meet the team and be here. But yeah, so I am a husband, father of 5, founder of Master Networks, a national networking organization, which we have lots of people here in Delaware, part of Master Networks.
Heck yeah. And anybody that's listened to this show has heard me mention Master Networks quite a few times. Even if that hasn't been the sole topic of the conversation, I've definitely leaned into the way that Master Networks has helped me in business, not just as a business owner, but as an individual grow. And so they're definitely familiar with the name of Master Networks. We've had plenty. In fact, all of this season so far has been Master Networks members on as guests, which is cool because they're all high-level entrepreneurs in this area that are just rocking and rolling. Yeah. So we're going to go into kind of the way that this came to be, how Master Networks came to be something that you had an idea for, and how it came to grow from just an idea to a full-fledged business and an impact to so many.
Yeah, super excited. So, I mean, to go back and not just to give the short version of the story, but to go back, I was in the real estate industry and 2009, it's just funny because I was just telling this, earlier that 2008, I was making a lot of money. Real estate was just easy. A lot like it feels right now at this moment, depending on when you're watching this, but in this moment right now, it's felt like that, but I think things are going to change a little bit. Maybe not quite like 2009 and 10, but that
here's hoping.
Yeah, right. Well, like we talked about before, I mean, history is set to repeat itself unless we've learned something from it. And so I think there's ways we've learned, but maybe not. But it was really like going from one day of having a lot to one day not. And I was part of a networking organization that I'd been part of for 10 years. It was supportive of my business growth. But what happened was when we had our last 2 kids, our twins, one of them had to have surgery, and I wasn't attending that meeting because I was focused on my family, which I should be. And they sent me a letter that said, hey, thanks for coming, but you've missed a couple meetings, you're out. And that's the rules. I knew them. I get it. But I had some priorities I needed to attend to.
Sure.
But as most things in our life that we can see as a burden turns into a blessing, right? It opened up my eyes to an opportunity to create my own network that I was looking forward to building. And so we did. We mapped it out on a napkin and kind of took it forward and built our own network of like-minded, learning-based. I mean, really, we're a training and education company just disguised as a networking company, right? We organize in networks, but we're really a training and personal development company. So that's that journey started 11 years ago, and now we're in 28 states and thousands of members.
It's crazy, man. It's so awesome to watch too, because like I said earlier too, like when you believe in something, obviously it's something that you talk about. And so to watch Master Networks grow the way that it has is huge, but I love the training aspect. And honestly, for me, that was something that was extremely beneficial as I was trying to grow my business and I didn't have the resources to provide business training to my team members and, or the time, right? Like I didn't have that time or the resources to do it. And I really knew it was important and I wanted to. Yeah. And so what I was able to do is I was able to take some of my team members and plug them into different Master Networks chapters, knowing that also in sync, we were all going to be receiving the same training each week. And so that we could bring it back later as a team and discuss it. And so it was huge in not just the growth of our business, but in the team members individually within the team.
Yeah. And not everyone thinks like that. That's first of all, that was very smart to do that. But here's what's also helpful is then your team. starts to, because now they're surrounded by entrepreneurs. They also start to think and understand how you're thinking about
Correct,
the business, right? And then instead of just their job, just their role, they're like, oh, well, that makes sense. Now I understand why Bobby's thinking that way, why you're doing that, because they can start being surrounded by entrepreneurs, and they can be really what we call the intrapreneur. They're entrepreneurial minded, but they're in your venture. And every great business needs lots of intrapreneurs.
Yeah, 100%. And you know, so the thing that stands out about that story with the removal of you in that meeting, and again, we're not going to name any names, but there are groups like that are very transactional, and when the transaction's no longer there, you're forgotten quickly. And so that part of Master Networks, when we talked about this morning, is like so much of what they say in the why statement is beyond the business. Can you open up on that and why that was included in the why statement and just elaborate on that a little bit too?
Yeah. So for me, I mean, I want anybody listening, if you're in business, like your network is not an extracurricular activity. It's not like, oh, I've heard I need to do networking. And the problem is most people think they understand what networking is, which we can talk about in a minute. But for me, going through a time, I think I should give context to this. So I lose kind of exit the real estate companies, lose part of that, sell it for next to nothing. And the part that's really hard for people to understand is that because they can see what I am today or what it is today and where I've come from, but they forget where I came from because they don't know that story. Yeah. And so those roots for me have never been lost, and they're deep. And that is that my mentor was in my office giving me advice on how to grow the company. And I remember in that moment getting a call from my wife, a text, a call, a text. And I'm like, dang, she knows I'm in this meeting. Like, what is going on? She never, like, it's pretty rare that she'll reach out during something like that. So I step out, I'm on the phone, and she's like, hey, I'm sorry to bother you. I'm like, you're not bothering, like, you're never bothering me. But she knew how important this meeting was, right? And we've all been in those meetings. And I'm like, what's going on? And she said, well, I'm at the grocery store. So if you can envision at this point, she's got like a 2.5-year-old and then fairly newborn twins.
Yeah.
It's nuts, right? So
it's already a hard enough task to go grocery shopping in the first place.
She's got one cart with them in it and then the other with like some food and stuff, right? And so she's like, hey, I'm trying to buy stuff and the card's not working. And I'm like, well, hang on, let me look. So I hang up, I look online, and I'll never forget it. It was $27. And you've heard me tell it, but it's $27 in my pocket. And if you know like how expensive diapers are and all that stuff, I'm like, okay, just get what you can, what's required for today, and I'll figure out tomorrow. And then I turn around and walk back in the office, and my mentor's like, all right, let's take over the world. Here's how we're going to do this. And I'm like, this is not like, this doesn't make sense. I can't put this together. So when I talk about that, it was the network that helped me. It was the network that saved me from a business standpoint, but also personally. And so that wasn't transactional. That was relational. And so for me, our business is a platform. Your business is a platform. You use it as a platform. 100%. That's why it's got to be beyond the business. If you're just building a business for business sake and transaction sake, you're missing it. It's got to be a platform for good that goes beyond just the business.
Do you think that there's a lot more? I mean, obviously, there's a lot of business owners that are transaction focused in the beginning, but do you think that plays out later for most businesses, that they start out as something that's going to generate money and then they find their purpose? Or do you think that most businesses are formed with purpose?
That's a great question. I think it's mixed. I think some people go in with a purpose, but I think most people in life still are trying to discover their purpose, right? They're still trying to like discover where their gifts are and where their blessings are. And then when they can put that within the business. So I actually don't think that the business per se is as important as you bringing your blessings, your gifts to the business. Then you'll find your purpose, because again, the business is an extension of you. It's a platform of you. So for example, when I was in real estate, I brought the same gifts, the same blessings to that business and used it as a platform to impact customers just through that product or service. Yeah. Right. So I think I often hear people say like, oh, go find your passion and your purpose and then build a business around it. Right. Like, I love football too, but I'm not good enough to play in the NFL. Right. Now I'm passionate about it. I've coached all that stuff, but I'm not making a living at that.
Right, exactly.
But I'm making a living so that I can now coach my kids in my passion. Right? And I'm still passionate about my business.
I love that.
Does it make sense?
Yeah, for sure. And I love that too, because I do hear that so much, and I just feel like that's not practical for most people, right? And there are going to be times where like, Okay, what I care about and I love to do also is not a very income producing activity. So like it's gonna be hard to monetize
There's a
this.
struggle too, Bobby. You just talked about something. So I think there's a struggle that most business owners, in my experience, struggle with, and a lot of that has to do with how they're raised about money. So, for example, when we say relational and transactional, right? This is how most people hear this.
Yeah,
This is really, really important if you own a business. They think transactional is just about money and relational is about just the connection. And there's almost like this Venn diagram where they do overlap.
yes,
right?
100%.
And so like, I'll give you the extreme on each side. Like the transactional extreme is charge really high rates, don't offer value, money at all costs, right? Like that kind of thing.
Yes.
And the relationship side, and there's people like this in business, you know them. Well, Bobby, can I get a deal? Okay, I'll give you a deal, 60% off, whatever. Would you do this one for me for free? And oh yeah, you're my friend. And they think that's relational. Meanwhile, they're crippling their business, right? So you have those two extremes. To be transactional means you put the transaction above everything else. And so when I say be relational, not transactional, that doesn't mean do it for free.
Yeah.
Do it at a loss. Do it like, no, that is not relational. In fact, it causes you over time to be less relational. I just think it's important for business owners to understand when we say relational and transactional, what we're really talking about.
It's so big. And so, when it comes to like, and I love sales and sales training and all the things that go along with that. And there's a saying in sales that nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care, which big picture is the relationships,
Correct.
Right? So like when you're out there building these relationships, what are you doing? You're showing people how you care about what it is you do, right? You're gaining that trust. And then because of that time spent, there's so much trust in you so that when a question's asked about your profession or there's a need for what you do, there's so much more respect and the transaction itself becomes so much more smooth than it would have been if you'd have just knocked on somebody's door. And I think that's the part. Now, to your point, we have a responsibility, especially if your business, if you're doing something within your business, and this is something I firmly believe in, right, is that if you're aiming to do anything other than be the best at what you do, then you're setting yourself up for failure, right? Totally. Because along with what we're talking about becomes this moral obligation that really fits into place like a puzzle piece once you have this absolute conviction that it is your moral obligation to serve people, right? Because when you serve them, you're going to save them from so much grief of dealing with other people that are not going to serve them at the level that you do. So that when you are out there building these relationships and you pair that with the responsibility to serve, it's magical what can happen because you're doing it on the premise of, okay, not only am I going to be relational here, but because I'm delivering at such a high level here, I'm going to encourage and nurture relationships on the back end. Nobody's going to feel taken.
Well, and here's how money ties into that. If you can't build a business with enough margin to have profit to reinvest, you can't serve the customer. You can't be relational.
Yep.
It's like, I'll give you a really down to earth, like real world example. Somebody I was coaching recently is a business coach. And when I start looking at the fact that they're not making any money, where's their focus? Totally transactional. They got to make money. Versus if they're making really good money, because first of all, they don't charge enough. Like that's the problem, right? They're charging like whatever. So they're just not making enough. So I'm like, you got to double your prices. Like literally they have to double them. And they would be actually at really normal pricing, but they think that they're cutting their customer a break. Charge a lot, make good profit, and now you can be totally focused on serving your customer because the money's taken care of. That makes sense?
Yeah, and then you can continue to invest in ways, more ways to bring value to that offering and to other people. I love that. And again, going back to like the sales training and stuff like that, you learn like this. The price is typically the least important part of the sale. Because, and one of the things that we do at Brightside, we have a survey
as long as there's value.
Of course. Right. And so one of the questions that we ask when we first meet with a client at Brightside is we're going to ask you how important the quality of these next three things are. And it's the quality of the product, the quality of the price, and the quality of the service. Right. And I tell them that I say you can only pick one. Right. and they never pick price. And sometimes I'll give them, they'll be like, oh, I really want to pick 2. I was like, okay, go ahead, pick 2, because they're never going to pick price. It doesn't matter. I could give them 2 choices. They're not going to pick the price because the other things just matter that much more. And so, I am familiar with that conversation with a lot of business owners who are underpricing themselves because they feel like that's what's going to help their client. But in the end, they end up shortchanging themselves on the resources that they can use to better serve their clients, like you said.
I'll give you another example really quickly. So I'm part of a gym and pay a membership, and they're touting the fact that in, I think, 7 years, they haven't raised their price at the gym. Okay, that'd be fine, but go into the gym. It's dirty. We're starting to see it, like them losing people. They're not maintaining their equipment. Like, I'm now at a place after 7 years of being part of that gym where I want to change.
Yeah.
So I'm like, no, but if you would charge me $10, $15, $20 more a month, clean it, keep it up, maintain the equipment, maybe some new one, maintain the current one, etc. Like, I wouldn't. It's a great location. I don't want to have to move. Right. So that's the part where they think, oh, I'm serving you at a high level. No, you're not.
Yeah, you're missing the mark. It's crazy. I do want to transition. We had a conversation on our show last night, and it was about, and this will kind of segue properly to one of the questions I warned you I'd be asking about. And it was there was somebody in the coaching space who was connected to a community in the coaching space, and they had a very, very great offer, very low price, but tons of value brought. And this person said, I'm not going to tell my people about it because it's kind of an overlap as to what we offer, and it could take money out of our pockets essentially. Whereas I was looking at it, I was like, no, wait, if I was in that position, I couldn't get this message to my people fast enough. Like, I couldn't get this to them fast enough. And the idea was, and we see this a lot, is like there's people out there that are unhappy and feel like they're unhappy because other people are coming in and taking their happiness or their money. And a lot of times it's just the fear that that's happening that's actually stealing their joy and their money. Totally. And so when we talk about this a lot in Master Networks, and I love that this is such a big part of the model, is the mindset of abundance over the mindset of scarcity. And so I want to basically just simply ask you, what does that mean to you, and how have you seen that play out for your Master Networks members?
So if anyone is like struggling with the mindset of abundance versus scarcity, here's a great activity to do. Travel somewhere new. And here's what I mean. Every time I get on a plane, and I do this a lot, and I'm traveling, this happens almost every time. Like, we just did it, right? We flew into Philly, drove here. It's quite a little drive.
I know. There's no airport here, bro. I'm sorry.
No, it's great. It's easy, right? But here's what's going through my mind. The whole drive, I'm looking at business. I'm driving down. I'm like, oh my gosh, there's so much opportunity. And it happens in every city I go to. And then, I think even like in Dallas, we have a ton of members of Master Networks, but like, I drive through the tollway and I'm like, oh my gosh, there's still so much untapped. Like, it's a great, because we start to condense our visual world to all the 4 miles we basically circle all the time. But as soon as you step out of that, you go like, it's huge, it's big. Like, there's a lot of opportunity, right? And even if you serve just your local community, there's tons of opportunity. So I just think, there was I've shown this at several presentations I've done. There was a kind of a meme, a picture of, oh my gosh, why am I drawing? Michael Phelps, swimmer, right?
Yeah.
And remember, he was like crushing everybody in the Olympics, right? And there's the one where like he almost loses, and that swimmer next to him is like looking over at him. Yes. You've probably all seen that, right? He's like looking over at him, but Phelps's head's down and he's going, right? That's how I always look. Like, I've had people in my own company be like, hey, we should check out our competitors and like see what they're doing, see what we're offering. I'm like, who's that? Like, I'm not going to spend any time looking at them. Yeah. And that's not because I don't respect them. I'm not going to model any of my decisions based on, I should just stay focused on what I'm doing. I'm a fairly spiritual person. There's a great scripture that I love that's like, and then I talk about this a lot with my kids too. It's like, it talks about, it says, no man having put his hand to the plow and looking back is fit for the kingdom. Meaning, when you plow or you mow, like, let's use mowing, right? You mow and you pick a fence post and you mow, you're going to mow in a straight line. But if you're mowing and you look back, or you look to the down, or you look sideways, and next thing you know, you turn around and it's crooked.
It's all kinds of crazy.
And so it's like, pick a post, pick a goal, go for it, keep your head on it and move. And I think for business owners, when they start comparing to other business owners, how fast somebody did it, how slow somebody else did it, what they charge with, you're not going to have joy. You're going to be they're going to dictate your future. They're going to dictate your temperature. You got to set your own.
So I have some questions on that, because I think you're so right. I see a lot of business owners who are, focused on their own lane, and they're doing that, and that's great. But sometimes it also causes them to be unaware of what's happening in their industry, which can be a little interesting. But I think you're right. I think that we cannot use other businesses to influence maybe what it is that we're trying to do, or even compare ourselves, right? Which is the thief of joy, right? Is comparing us to other people or other businesses, because there's a lot that's happening in industries that are traditional and are stifling the growth in those industries. And when you are a little bit more focused on what it is that you're doing and why you're doing it and who you're trying to serve and why you're trying to serve them, you can really focus on the value that's brought for that reason, versus let me look at what everybody else is doing and try to either duplicate or improve on what they're doing, instead of just creating your entire own approach.
So let me dig on that one. I actually just had this conversation outside with somebody a few minutes ago. Yes, there's being ignorant,
right,
and not being aware of anything in your industry, and then there's like focusing on your client, and then there's just putting your head down and working. And Russell Brunson says it really well. He talks about the improvement offer, the new opportunity, and the improvement offer is the ER, better, faster, cheaper, stronger, whatever it is, you're just better. It's just the ER. And I love how that description, because it makes me think, like, are we just better at this thing that somebody else does, or are we the new opportunity? For example, are we a networking organization? No, we're training and education organization disguised as a networking company, because now we're the new opportunity. We're a training and development organization. We're not a networking company, right? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because if we're just a networking organization,
then you're grouped in with everybody else.
We're grouped in, and we have more of something. We're better at this. We're better at training and education. We're better at this. We're cheaper than this. No, that's not the weight I want to be. So like in the roofing, right? How can you be the new opportunity, which I think you are? And there's some ways you could dig on that, but it's like, we're not just cheaper, we're not just faster, we're not just better. No, we're a completely new opportunity. Yeah. And if you can separate yourself that way, you're going to stand out, and then everyone's going to be chasing you.
Yeah. I like that too. And it's funny because we do have like the good, better, best model at Brightside. And I'm like thinking about the better model or in the middle, right? And like the things about it. Yeah, it's interesting. But I think that there's a lot of times where we just, we kind of look at the industry norms and we just try to, especially early, I think a lot of people are like, okay, they're doing this, I need to. And it's so interesting because, to your point, like right now, Brightside's not offering roof repairs, right? And that is a hard pill to swallow for me, because I think we definitely should be. However, I'm also not going to be serving my client properly if I try to pull that off right now. Right?
Yes.
So it doesn't matter that all my other competitors are offering the repairs, because I have a responsibility to. Is that me?
See, you get business right now.
Yeah. And so I have a responsibility to my people to serve them at the level that I'm serving them. If I change that based on what other people are doing, now I've sacrificed something that I could have done here. Now there'll come a time where I can reintroduce that to our offerings, but now it's not the right time.
No, right now you just say our roofs are so good we don't need to offer repairs.
that is a true statement. But we look at like the idea of like
when someone says, "How come you don't offer repairs?" Our roofs are so good we don't offer repairs.
That's right. You can repair somebody else's roof, or you can put a roof that's never going to need a repair on. So yeah, but and you're right. I mean, we've just done things on our terms, and with the intention, by the way, to continue to add value to, and we've seen that with Master Networks. And I love that. We've had to communicate to our team members recently that there's a price increase coming, which is nothing to be ashamed of. Absolutely not. And I think it's something to be proud of, because in the time since the last price increase at Master Networks, so much value has been brought. Yeah. Right. So what does that tell us?
And the more that goes back to like, the more we can continue to bring.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. And because history, tells us like, listen, the last price increase and then all this came. So what does that tell you guys guys now about this one. Stay tuned for what's coming, right? And so, and I love that because it's not hiding from it. It's not saying, okay, let me try to find ways to cut our costs. It's find ways to increase the value to our people, and that's what just stands out.
And so I have to tell the story because that decision, first of all, wasn't made in a vacuum. It wasn't like I sat in my office twiddling my, how much could we charge?
Yeah.
Not at all. In fact, it came from our members.
Yeah.
So we have a national council, and some of those members talked about improvements we needed to make. And I was like, would love to invest in that technology, love to invest in that resource. That's going to require us to change the price. And so it was a it was a 9-month discussion, right? But I'll just tell you, we was talking about Russell Brunson a minute ago. I was in a mastermind group with him, and I got on stage and was pitching our business basically and asking for help with this mastermind group. It was super solid. You know, the guy got $1 billion offer on his company. He turned down. I don't know if you know, like with a B, $1 billion offer, turned it down. The guy knows a few things about business and marketing, right? Couple billion, maybe $1 billion. He knows at least $1 billion ideas. So I'm presenting this, and somebody asked the question, so how much do you charge? Like, what's the membership fee? And I tell him it's $50 a month. And he has the microphone because he was asking questions, and then somebody asked it. He literally says, and it's recorded, it's in the microphone. He's like, $50 a month? That's stupid.
I agree, Russell.
And I'm like, I'm sitting in this room that I paid a lot of money to be in, and that's like, this is my baby. And he's like, and now I love him. We're friends. Like, but it's stupid.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I've been saying, and I don't mean to interrupt you.
Yeah.
I say that, but I do this often. But I've been saying in my region forever. And as a business owner who paid for multiple memberships for their people to learn, I'd have paid twice as much a long time ago.
Yeah. So, and we heard that. And I shared that, and we'd already been in this discussion. So I was telling him we're in this discussion. Well, he comes up to me after the break, after I'm done and at a break, and he says, look, think about something. He goes, I've raised prices. I've owned other businesses, and we do this. He said, I want you to understand when you raise your prices. So for those business owners that understand there's inflation right now, well, inflation exists because there's more money in the marketplace right now, not less.
Right.
That's a misunderstanding that people have. That's what causes inflation. So, excuse me. So we're in this position, and he says, listen, if you're going to raise your prices, tear the Band-Aid.
Yes.
Do not kill them with a bunch of slow cuts. Just go rip the Band-Aid, because the same people that'll leave, say, with a $5 increase will leave at a $25 increase. And so you got to do it. I mean, he suggested we go way more than we're paying or what we even raised it to, but and maybe I should have listened to $1 billion, valued at $1 billionaire. But his point was, so for those of you listening to this who may be considering your prices, number one, you have to right now, and I think it's going to be required to weather the storm. And number two, do it once and get it over with, and keep moving forward.
Yeah. This, I mean, again, some of it we've already covered, but it kind of goes into the same conversation that you talk about when business owners are looking at their numbers in general. Yeah. A lot of times they ignore the top line and focus on all the areas where they can cut prices. And this isn't in response to inflation or anything. This is just in response to the way that a business owner will typically look at where they are with their profit, their costs, and those things. They look at where they can cut costs versus increase your sales or raise your prices. And I love that conversation because for me, especially, growing a small business from the ground up with no money, if we lost a transmission in a truck, Chaz, sell a roof.
Yep.
If we lost, a motor in a truck, sell a roof. If a customer over here decided they weren't going to pay for whatever reason, and maybe that was their intention the entire time, who knows, go sell another roof. Yeah. And it was like, and obviously I never did that in an unhealthy fashion where I bit off more than I can chew. I couldn't get the work done, but I also understood that in the sale and in the top line, I could fix so many problems on the back end. Totally. And do you want to add to that?
Yeah. So I'm super passionate about this. And there's lots of people that talk about it. I mean, Grant Cardone talks about, top line revenue is the thing and growth solves issues. And I'm not disagreeing, 100% agree with that. But one thing just for myself that's come up recently as we were in this pricing discussion was, and maybe this was like my own advancement in business, was not just top line and where I'm advancing to. Because so you have income, expense, and where most people knee-jerk reaction is you go fix expense. Okay, but let's say you've done that. Then to your point, if you haven't bitten off more than you can chew, you're basically spending what is necessary. Go sell more roofs. That's the top line. However, the advanced part of that is you have sell a roof, but you have cost of sale every time you sell a roof. There's some cost, the materials, et cetera, right? If you don't ever look at your margin, you will always chase. And so for us, when I looked at the Master Networks membership, what I realized is when we sat down and we started looking at every product we have, every service we offer, and we looked at the margin, that was scary.
Yeah.
Because it was like, no matter what our growth metric ever hit.
Right. Yeah. It's a little different. Yeah.
The profit wasn't changing.
Yeah.
I mean, a little bit, but we needed to increase the margin.
Yes.
And so that's a piece I think with most business owners, because I've met someone like, I'm bringing in $5 million a year.
Are you hanging on to any of it?
Yeah, I lost money and my expenses are tight. Well, let's look at each product's, and then like some products were losing, they were upside down in margin, but others had big profit margin.
Yeah.
Then put 100% of your effort here, not here, that kind of thing. So
yeah, I love that conversation.
I don't often talk about the margin because I think that's something that might be a little hard for people who aren't really tracking their numbers.
Yeah.
Then at least start at top line.
Yeah, I mean, and for our biggest year so far at Brightside, we hit 5 million.
Congrats, that's awesome.
And but with that being said, I mean, looking at the numerous examples that we've seen, I would have been perfectly fine at 3 million gross revenue if the profit, you know what I mean? Because like there's people out there that are. I mean, we're in this area, we are definitely, especially Central Delaware, we are the most. And I hate using the word expensive, but we are the most expensive in this area. Now, we bring a ton of value with it, and for that reason, the people that get roofs done by us are never going to have to worry about that roof again, and that's written in clad. But with that being said, I've also seen tons of people in the roofing industry at different conferences who are half our price and twice our gross. And to me, they're working way harder than our team is and making the same amount of money or less. And, the team morale in a situation like that can be devastated by the amount of work that is required to create the same amount of money back that gets invested back, because it's the same money back. And so to me, there's so many different facets of this conversation, because you don't understand how hard you're beating your people to deliver at repetition when it could take half the work and create the same amount of money. There's a mindset shift that has to happen for us, because so many people are just afraid of that number. And to me, like you said, right? To me, our roof should be twice what they are with reason and pride, right? And yet, there's the other side of it is like, I also have to deliver a value package, right? And so I could deliver great product and great service and still rob people, you know what I mean? And charge too much and so to me, it's a combination of the quality of three things that I have to bring to the table for my people to be referred again and to have them 100% happy on the back end. I've seen some of my competitors who are twice our price do a great job, and this people still feel taken. And that's something I never want to do.
I look at like Myron Golden. I've talked about this before.
He
did a great job explaining this. I won't do it justice. But the point was, he talks about how many people in business say, I want to be a millionaire. And he's like, you will be.
Yeah.
He's like, if you made $25,000, you'll be a millionaire. It's just going to take you 40 years.
Right. Yeah.
Or whatever the math is. I think it's 40 years, right?
Yeah.
It's going to take you 40 years. And you're like,
confirming he's quick over there.
Thank you for that math. Yeah. So it's like, oh yeah, I guess I didn't think about that. Yeah. He's like, so it's better to, people always hate the word, get rich quick scheme, right? That's we all think that. He's like, why do you want to get rich quick or get rich slow?
Right.
Like, that makes no sense.
Yeah.
So we've already been pre-framed with the idea that getting rich quick is a bad idea.
Yeah.
No, get rich quick. And so the only way to do that is charge adequate prices at volumes high enough and margins high enough. That's the only way it's going to happen.
That's it. Yeah. And it's something I think Ken just had Brian Tracy on his show a couple months ago or something like that. Yeah. Brian Tracy has a comment that I love, and it's about that. It's like people are like feel like they should feel guilty about making money, and he's like, I've been asked by people, because he's done well for himself. He's like, I've been asked by people, do I feel bad for the money that I've made? And he's like, No, he's like, the very best way for me to help the homeless is by not becoming one of them.
Yes,
And I'm
exactly.
like, and I freaking love that comment because it does wrap things up. I mean, like you've said it a few times, I think, and I've heard it, a number of times, that money, it doesn't change people. It just makes you more of what you were.
It's a revealer.
Yeah.
It reveals who you are. I mean, if you ever been out to dinner with your wife or you see somebody struggling or whatever, and you're like, man, I wish we could help them. Or now you can.
Yeah.
But I hate being in a position, or I've hated in the past being in a position where I couldn't help somebody.
Oh, man.
Okay, so now you have every opportunity as a business owner to change that.
Yeah.
I mean, I've had family recently and others that I've been able to help. I don't say that as like, oh, no, I've wanted to,
right?
And I'm happy to, and I'm grateful that I'm in a position that I can.
Yeah.
Because now I can just multiply who I am, and it reveals who I am. Now there are people that getting money just revealed the rotten egg they were to begin with, but that's what money does.
Do you think, I mean, I'm sure it's possible, but do you think that that there are people that, the money does change who they are? Like let's say like somebody's like, okay, I'm not in a position to help people right now, but I want to do better so that I can help people, and then they get along that route, and and the greed kicks in. Yeah.
The greed kicks in, but I would submit that there was probably some of that to begin with.
Yeah.
Right. That's probably why. And if you watch people over time, there's been people who get money, they lose it, or I don't mean lose it in a sense that like market conditions. I mean, they lose it.
Yeah.
And then they're smarter the second time and go, okay, I figured this out, where money revealed me the first time. And now they go on a personal development journey and they make it the second time and they don't lose it because they had to change.
Yeah.
So I think you have to be careful when you make those decisions because people are in different spots of their journey, and you might be catching them. That's why that comparison thing's bad, because you'll see people who have money, and I've been in circles with this where I see somebody, I'm like, man, they're crushing it. They're making all this money. And then like 4 years later, they barely have any. And I was like, okay, they were on that part of the journey.
Yes.
They had to figure that piece out. And I've been through that a little bit. And so now I'm like going into this sort of second phase of making money and business and all this stuff. I'm like, okay, those were all lessons I have to learn. And if you're young and you're in your first round of this, like learn them.
Yeah.
Don't make the same mistakes.
Yeah. Treat people right on the way up because you might run into them on the way down.
So true. So true.
Yeah, that's so good. And, I think what you said was true too. It's like those people who, said they're going to get, they're going to get on so that they can help other people, were they truly being genuine, and was the money the revealer of their true intention too? I think that's important. Vic Blends, who I've brought up, I think a couple other times on the show, he's an influencer. Are you where? Yeah. It's a cool concept too. I love this concept. And the kid is young, and he's got his mind on his head on right. And so it's cool to watch. But, one of the things he talks about is like, if you're chasing money to help people, don't get the money and forget why you were after it in the first place. And, he talks about the way that he's been able to help his family and stuff like that. And I think that, it is important to, understand that when you have a better, when you have more money, you can help more people. There's nothing to be ashamed of there. And so, but also, like you said, it's like, if you're going to do this and then you don't help anybody, remember that later when you want the help from them to get back up on your feet. So true. There's a lot of that. So Master Networks, we've talked about a lot today in Master Networks, the meeting before this, which we've had tons of people in our region truly get impacted by Master Networks to the degree that they never expected. I talked about the benefits that I've seen, but we've seen a couple of different people experience tragedy in the chapter. We've seen, that play out, and then we've watched the responses of the people around them. How proud does that make you when you hear those stories of your members rallying around other people?
Yeah. How proud does it make me? That's a great question. I don't know if I've ever been asked that. That's great. Yeah, I'm proud, but like the pride and the proudness is of the people in the room, because as I say this all the time, if we don't show up and live our core values as an organization, it is just a name. Mm-hmm. It's just a name on a wall. It's an entity that has has a EIN number. It's nothing. Yeah. It's us living the values and seeing that happen that makes me proud. And it makes me proud that there's others that are contributing to it. I'm writing a book right now called Impact, Becoming a Person of Positive Influence. And about 40% through.
I'm excited for that one.
Yeah, this one's really fun for us to do the research, write, have really critical thinking on, challenge our own thoughts. Like this is so fun. We're challenging a lot of cliches that people say in business to see if they're real. Like, we say it all the time, or we do these things in business. And
I love that.
We're challenging this whole idea of how you make an impact. And what I'm witnessing is this idea that we put action behind. In that room we just saw an hour ago, there is impact happening. And so that makes me proud that others are sort of carrying that and making it happen. Not me.
Yeah.
But them. Because that will this is a phase of business I'm in right now, is how do I make this go way beyond me?
Right.
So I pass, I'm gone.
Yeah.
How does this continue to just explode? That's what's exciting about that. It makes me proud.
Yeah, that makes me think of, I love this quote that's the most successful people plant trees under which they know they'll never sit. And so it's like, what's to come, right? And so, and obviously, look, passing the credit to the people is just simply the right thing to do here, because without them, this is just a space. And if I talk physically about what we just experienced in there, I'm literally just providing this space in there. And so what
you are, but you're also you're living the values, which attracts other people that will live the values. And that's the whole part. And so that's why I don't ever want to underestimate the fact that every business should have core values.
Yes.
Because that's the guiding. And by the way, that's a sneak peek to the book. As we build a impact funnel, as we call it, the guardrails are your core values.
Yeah.
That keeps everything within it.
Yeah. And the rumble strips.
Exactly.
Because hopefully you don't hit the guardrail.
Totally.
All right. We could probably chat all day, Chaz, but I do want to step into tomorrow. We're having a workshop. It's the first regional workshop since I've been a regional partner here in Delaware. And that's exciting. I know. But I'm excited because now I'm like, we're going to do these quarterly. Like, you don't know this yet, but you're going to be flying into another state and being driven into Delaware a few more times each year.
I love it. It's my passion.
So let's talk about that. Like, so tomorrow in the room, what is your ultimate objective while you're in the room?
I'm glad you use that word, because that is the thing. I'm always objective driven, not agenda driven.
Yeah.
So where I differ in presentations is I've done this like hundreds, if not into the thousands. I speak on these things. I live them, so they're not theoretical. So tomorrow I have a framework that I'm going to go through. But what I'm going to do at the very beginning, and you'll see this happen, is I want to know where people are stuck. And I will lead the framework to where they're stuck. So we will be objective driven, not agenda driven. Like if I don't get to the last 2 points, I don't get to them. That's fine by me. I leave knowing we hit the objective, which is, hey, I'm a business owner and I'm stuck here in my marketing, I'm stuck here in my sales, and I'm stuck here in my revenue path. Great, let's dig there. And I have the frameworks to help you, and let's go through those. That's really the goal of tomorrow. So anyone that's going to be there is going to walk out with understanding where they're stuck and at least a framework and an answer on how to overcome it, or who they can reach out to get their problem solved.
Yeah, I love that. And I've been in a room with you on stage a few times, and I do like that you are very good at reading the room. You're very good at hearing the things at the breaks and lunches and stuff like that, and then responding to them, which is so big. It's awesome. I'm excited. I can't wait to get in the room tomorrow and rock out with that. There's a couple last things I think I want to have you touch on, just for the benefit of the people listening. There's a lot of business owners out there, or people that are looking to start businesses, and we're in a questionable time right now. So what kind of advice would you leave my listeners with, who are either in business and they're experiencing the rising inflation, they're experiencing everything that's going on in the world right now, or they're about to start a business and experiencing all this?
Well, some would say this isn't a good time to start a business. I would dispute that. I think this is a great time to start a business, first and foremost. But here's my sort of the business advice that I'm giving is overall. Man, my allergies in Delaware hit me today.
Bro. I thought I was going to blow my nose clean off my face this morning before I took my medicine.
So here's the thing with business right now. Everyone is going to realize, if they haven't already, that a network is not an extracurricular activity. It is not a thing you go do. Your network will insulate you from the challenges that are coming and that are here and will come. Your network is your support system. Your network is your resources. Your network could be your money. Your network could be where your sales come from, every part of it. And so that's why I say I don't think people really understand. I said this a while ago when we first started. I don't think people really understand what their network is. My advice to everyone is to go build it. Go build it now. Don't build it when you need it. I joke that it's like a line of credit, right? I remember when I started Master Networks and it was tight. Like, again, maybe I had a little bit more than the $27, but I didn't have much more. And I went to my friend who was a banker who was in the chapter, and I said, I need a line of credit. Like, we got to have some operating capital. And he runs some stuff. He comes back. He's like, sorry, dude, I can't help you. I'm like, what do you mean? I need a line of credit. He's like, you have no money. I'm like, I know. That's why I need a line of credit.
If I had money, I wouldn't need this.
And he's like, no, that's not how this works. And like, I was still so young, and I was like, that doesn't make sense to me. I need a line of credit. And so it's like, you got to have some money to go in and actually get. So you always get the line of credit before you need the line of credit.
For sure.
That's what a network is.
Yeah.
Your network is your line of credit.
Yeah.
You've got to go build it now before you need it. And that is my biggest advice. You can get marketing advice. You can get sales stuff. You can get tactical things, but your network is the insulation to the isolated market.
Yeah. You know, it's so funny you bring that up. There was an instance, this was a couple years ago now, and, you know, there are times where with Brightside, we've had to send a quote versus actually meeting with somebody and showing the value and things like that, right? And so it was probably one of those instances, and somebody made a post about needing a roof, right? And so a person commented, not Brightside, they're too expensive. And what was so incredible in that situation is I was like, okay, I want to respond to this. And so then I'm getting ready to respond. I'm typing out, you know, my well thought out response, and then ding, ding, ding. 3 Master Networks members comment and say, well, did you ever do business with them? Did you get to see the value that's brought for the price that they charge? Or did you see, like, and I'm like, here I am, Chaz, like, and this was a moment where my network hadn't really, I hadn't seen in front of me that clear an example of how my network will show up beyond the referral, right? It's like when they're advocating for your business, or in moments like that where, you know, we shouldn't have to defend ourselves anyway, but they're ready to. And so it was really interesting. But the other way that my network has played out, and that's something that over the next couple of months and the next year could be big for a business who does have to raise their price and have people that are experiencing the value versus the cheap guy and can attest to the value brought. The other thing that happened for us was the amount of value that we brought to our clients, simply being able to connect to them to other industry experts. And that's played out tremendously. Vicky, who you got to meet today, our director of First Impressions, she's plugged into multiple Master Networks chapters. And as a result, when somebody calls our office line at Brightside and needs something that we don't do, most of the time they don't leave without that problem being solved.
Such an intangible resource that people don't equate into the value of their business.
Right.
Totally.
And so when we think about networking, I think, you know, to your point, is like, we are always, and most people are always thinking referrals, business being sent, if they even know that much to know. But when you think about those things and the way that business, or, you know, the multiple times where you can reach out to another business in your area for input and perspective on what they've done that might be similar to what you're experiencing in your business. There's so many different ways that our networks show up for us. And in times like these, it's going to be what matters the most.
Think about what you just said, the closed loop ecosystem you just created. Because if you refer people within that loop, then they'll keep referring back. You close that loop, they're not going to go out to somewhere else, because every other resource in the trades, if you will, if I'll just use that as an example.
Yeah, for sure.
Every resource in the trades that they ever touch base with will always refer back to you. Yep. So you've created this sort of closed loop ecosystem.
100%.
That's why you're building a network. Otherwise, you send somebody somewhere and then they need your service again down the road. They go outside, right? Because they're not closed loop in that ecosystem that you've created.
And so many times that's played out for us. We're a roofing company, which obviously I've made very clear on this episode and many others. But we also offer siding and windows. So because we've created that with our clients, they'll call us and say, hey, we're actually decided to get windows. Do you know somebody that does them? And we're like, dang, if we hadn't created the front end relationship just off of being able to provide them with other service providers, we wouldn't have caught that lead either.
Yeah, but think about it this way. So you put the roof on. They don't do windows and siding right now.
Yeah.
But they need
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, so you need a painter.
Right.
No, but they know you already. I get that. but then they need a painter and you refer your painter.
Correct.
And then they're talking to the
I
painter
see.
and they're going, oh man, yeah, we're painting around that window. We should just get new windows. Well, have you talked to Brightside?
I didn't know they did windows.
I didn't know they did windows.
Yeah.
Do you see? No, but you've created the closed loop
Yes.
ecosystem so that anyone else that's in their home that's a trades is going to refer back to you.
Yep, I
See what
like
mean?
that. We get so many calls now. Vicky jokes about this. She's like, I have customers that call me and ask me about my cell phone providers and all kinds of stuff. And she's like, sure, I'll get you in contact with them. So shout out to Vicky. Guys, we're going to go ahead and wrap up this episode, but I want to make sure that you guys can follow Chaz on his social media platforms. So let's go ahead and plug those here. Do you have a place to send them?
Search either Master Networks or Chaz Wilson, ChasWilson. On any of the social platforms, you'll find me.
Okay, awesome stuff, guys. Go follow. There's a ton of value. We've talked about it numerous times throughout this episode. There's a ton of value being brought. Most of the content that this guy shoots then puts out for Master Networks also gets put out on his platform. So you're getting a ton of value just being connected to him on those platforms. So be sure to follow him. Stay tuned for the next episode of the Xtra Mile Podcast. And we thank all of you for all of your loyal listening and watching the episode. If there's any topics that you want us to cover, be sure to comment those in, and we will be sure to react to those comments and get you guys some insights on those. Thank you for tuning in.
Thank you for tuning in to the Xtra Mile Podcast. If you're still listening, that means you learned something or you would have turned this off. So make sure you subscribe so you never miss an episode of the Xtra Mile